Hey folks, I'm live here on Monday, October 26th at 3 p.m. I'm going to be talking about November. November is coming up here in a few days. Getting the chart up here for you. And we have, some big shifts ahead in the upcoming month. Let me pull the chart up here. And so the year is going fast. Hard to believe it's already November 2020. Um, don't know what to say about that, but it's going too fast, right? I do want to let you know, and I am letting people know that I have some free classes. As you can see, that banner scrolling across the bottom is actually a really great way for people who are interested to get some free classes, hours worth of free astrology classes, professional training, and even see if certification is for you. You might even get certified like a lot of my students are. And you wind up getting, again, these hours of classes, about 4.5 hours, that takes you all the way through how astrology works and why it works and how it works. And we're going to really, this really gives you a way to organize all the astrology information and put it in context rather than just sort of hit or miss videos here and there. So it's free, and you just go to the website vedicastrologycertification.com, and again, you could just put your name and email address in there, and after you do it, you could just click this sign up now, and you'll see you could start watching the first video right after you do it. So it's a little slow right now because I'm on the video, but so it's very easy for you to start watching all of these videos. The first one is called History of Vedic Astrology. There's a detailed mind map that shows all the different facets. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. And that's my way of putting some good teachings in your hands, because I like everyone to be able to benefit from Vedic astrology. Whoops, let me see here. All right, so let's start with the month ahead. There's some, as you see, this is November the 1st. So I'm going to talk about the general trends, and then I'm going to do a later video where I go over each individual day. But this is just going to be the trends for the month where I'm talking about important shifts. And then I'll go and do one that's every day. I have a few people here. Amy Eager says, glad to see you talking about what's to come now. Thanks, Amy. I hope you're doing well there. Amy's one of my students, one of my certification course students. She's actually started to learn how astrology works in depth. Greetings, Sam. Love your forecast, says Anthony. Great. Well, I'm glad you're here, Anthony. And so let's see what November has ahead for us. As you see, we start the month with Mars retrograde in Pisces. A few important, entry points into the year or into the month. Mars is still retrograde back in Pisces, and Mars had been in Aries, then it went retrograde, and it's going to continue retrograde. It turns direct later in November, which we'll look at, but it starts retrograde in Pisces, which is, it's sort of like the spiritual warrior, where we're actually reflecting on our willfulness, aggression, the things that give us courage and strength. And again, Mars retrograde is that sort of nature, but now it's in Pisces, which is about things that are more transcendent. It's a very transcendent time now. Even though there's a lot of intensity in the world and a lot of things going on, it's still a very transcendent, there's a lot of transcendent potential right now. And this transcendent nature is what allows us to think beyond just our life on Earth. We're not just a creature who is trying to win our battles on Earth and get the things we want. We're very immersed in Maya, in illusion. And when planets go into Pisces, they connect to something beyond, something transcendent. And that transcendence is, in fact, in many ways, the most important part of life, because it connects us with something more divine, our divine potential. And so this nature of Mars retrograde in Pisces is going to continue for a couple weeks. Let's go and see when it turns direct. And Mars turns direct on the 14th. So on November 14th, Mars turns direct. So between now and November 14th, Mars is retrograde in Pisces. And so again, we'll continue that reflective courage, the courage to see ourselves beyond just fighting our daily battles, because Mars is that energy that we use to fight our daily battles. Now, instead of just going, okay, I'm going to fight, my opinions, we're going, wait a minute, maybe I'm not really getting anywhere. Maybe I'm not really strong. Maybe all this stuff that I've been fighting for, all these opinions I have that I'm defending, are just waste of time. Let me connect with something more transcendent. So again, this has been great for people that practice like yoga and actual spiritual practices for the last few weeks. So expect that Mars retrograde in Pisces to continue, and that feeling, maybe, again, what it might feel like is you're not sure of where you're going. It can be some confusion about, okay, what am I fighting for here? And again, especially if you're ruled by Mars, or your Mars is so important because you're trying to win battles all the time, you're kind of confused, like, what's the point of all these battles? Well, that's good. We're supposed to get shaken up like that. So expect, again, a bit of external kind of confusion about what you're fighting for, but an inner strength until November 14th. Then Mars turns direct until the end of the month, and he's in, he's direct in Pisces until the end of the month. So he doesn't leave Pisces until December. So that quality of Mars will continue defending like the spiritual warrior, but it'll be more introspective, more reflection, more, hopefully, self-evaluation and evaluating what you're fighting for. Then, as he starts to move forward after November 14th, it could be really good for putting your newfound inspirations into practice, because that's what Mars really wants to do. Mars wants to find the battle that's worth fighting for and then fighting it. So now we're realizing that the battle worth fighting is something that's more cosmic and metaphysical, not physical or personal. The problem with Mars is we wind up defending our personal opinions, and we wind up fighting the wrong battle, right? We wind up fighting shadow enemies rather than real enemies. And that wastes our energy and makes us weak, whereas Mars is trying to make us strong. So this is a huge transit. I talked about this in my 2020 forecast. The transit of Mars through Pisces and then Aries and then back into Pisces and then back into Aries. This started in May. Mars has been back and forth in Pisces since May. That's why I'm making a big deal about it. We're in November. So Mars went into Pisces like May 18th or something. Entered Aries, went back, Pisces. So again, Mars is usually not in signs this long. So this is a big part of 2020, Mars in Pisces. This is really a big year for evaluating what's worth fighting for, evaluating what is worth sacrificing for, and what courage really is, what real courage is. Okay? And so we'll have that. That's going to be Mars throughout November. Sorry. I made the mistake of looking at some of the comments, and they're kind of funny. Hang on a second. Okay, so now we also have Jupiter he's going to make a big shift here in November. Jupiter starts in Sagittarius, of course. By the middle of November, Jupiter leaves. You see, this is November 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So by the 20th, Jupiter leaves Sagittarius by November 20th and goes into Capricorn. Now this is going to be a big shift away from the inspiring, the inspirational part of Jupiter in Sagittarius, where Jupiter is inspired. He's the guru, he's the teacher, higher wisdom, finding something to believe in, and something that is aligned with higher purpose, higher than just the mundane qualities of the world. Those mundane qualities of the world, like our job and our relationships and all of that, can tend to bring us down out of that lofty area where our spiritual purpose resides. And so this last year or so with Jupiter going through Sagittarius has been quite powerful to really align with our purpose and what we really believe. What do we really believe? What are our real beliefs? And clarifying them, in some ways destroying them as well, because Jupiter was also joined Ketu and whatnot. So it's been a whole kind of transformation of our beliefs. And again, that's in all levels. Our beliefs about not just God or religion or something, but our beliefs about the world in general. Like, obviously things like politics and leaders and whatnot. We have all kinds of beliefs now that are so different. Even our beliefs about other people. Notice how shattered and how surprising and shocking it's been that we've seen the beliefs that some people have who were shocked that people actually believe, again, in things like certain conspiracies and other kinds of things that we've seen, or even that people are so narrow-minded that they don't have open-mindedness toward others, or whatever it is. Our beliefs have been scrambled the last year with Jupiter going through Sagittarius. Again, it's been both powerful and positive, and also maybe disillusioning and disheartening. And we're still trying to get it right, especially as it relates to our beliefs about people. Because people, we have a lot of projections about other people. And we tend to see people as, oh, I thought you were this way, and then I found out you were that way, and oh, I'm shocked. Again, we need to be very open and tolerant with other people and not put them on some pedestal, which is what Jupiter tends to do with people. We're supposed to deal with people like Mercury and Venus deal with people. That people are all flawed, they all make mistakes, they're not gods, We're people. We make mistakes. We're half animal, half God. We're in between. So we should deal with each other and deal with people like Mercury and Venus, where there's a lot of room to grow and all like that. When we put people on a pedestal and we worship people, they're going to disappoint us. We're going to get into all of this projection. Jupiter is one of the main planets, if not the main planet of projection. Jupiter and the moon, where we project our beliefs onto people. I thought you were this way. We didn't think it, we believed it. I believed you were this great teacher. Now I see you're just this blah. I believed all this about you and blah, 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 whatever it is. So we're always, when we misappropriate Jupiter, we're supposed to use that Jupiterian energy for something big and beyond. And again, transcendent. I already talked about Pisces as the transcendent quality of Jupiter. Sagittarius is more of the worldly nature of Jupiter, which again, things like religion and beliefs, and that make us act a certain way. Teachers, gurus. And people often get disappointed with their gurus and their teachers because they maybe put them on a pedestal. And by the way, there are a lot of teachers that are disappointing and that let us down, and that are we expect more from them. We want them to model higher behavior or whatever it is. So these kinds of things are really a lot of what's been happening in the last year since Jupiter went into Sagittarius last year. So we have to look at these things with a lot of nuance and examine our disappointments, examine our projections, especially if in the way we personified, let's say, gurus and teachers, and they've disappointed us, or people and how people have disappointed us, especially people that we respect, that we've respected. Jupiter's going to go into Capricorn, and there's going to be more of a reckoning with that. There's going to be more of a shattering of those illusions. And Jupiter went into Capricorn already earlier, and then he came back out. Once COVID really hit, the period of time when COVID hit, especially the end of March until the end of June, that 3-month period where myself and kind of, I don't know, I would imagine every other Vedic astrologer said that this is going to be a really intense time. This is going to be a really hard time. That was when Jupiter was in Capricorn with Saturn, and remember how hard that felt, that sort of hunkering down feeling, where there was not a lot of hope, and it was like, okay, we just got to get through this. Remember how scary it felt, and how it was just like we're in for the long haul, this end of March to the end of June. That was Jupiter in Capricorn in 2020. And so we're going to have that's why Jupiter's debilitated in Capricorn, because it takes that hope and inspiration of Sagittarius and brings it into this applied work and effort of Capricorn. And the debilitation, the dignity, just means that's what it means. It means now you need to take those teachings and those things that inspire you and put them into practice. I talked about this a lot earlier in the year. There's no reason to pathologize the dignities, like the exalted and whatnot. It's just another thing to consider. It does show what it shows, but it also shows a lot of power and strength. And often when Jupiter is in Capricorn, there's a lot of effort, positive effort that's put forth toward the things that inspire us. That's what we should be doing. It doesn't mean it's the easy work or the thing that feels so good. Oh, I'm so elated by my inspirations and my teachings. No, it's not the elation of Sagittarius. It's the effort of Capricorn. And again, Jupiter is one of the most, I say this all the time, I talk about it in great depth Jupiter is the planet of disappointment. It's definitely not talked about enough with Jupiter. Hope and disappointment is Jupiter. We get disappointed in people. I'm going to say it again because I see some comments here, which I'm going to take some comments in a minute, but I don't just say these things willy-nilly. Jupiter is where we project these things onto people, and people disappoint us. Why? Because we shouldn't be hopeful about other people, and we disappoint other people as well. How do you like when people project all over you and then say, I thought you were this person and I find out you're just that? How does that feel to you? You're like, well, I'm sorry. I'm not here to make you happy. So what that's for, there's a spiritual reason for that. It's so that you can stop thinking that your salvation is going to be found in some person in the world, some teacher, or some anything out there. That is meant for God. That's what's supposed to inspire you. The teachings themselves are the point. And it's not just the teachings, it's your application of the teachings. When we get so disappointed with other people because we thought, I thought you were this thing, you're basically saying, I thought you were my savior. And now I realize you're not a savior, you're a devil, just like the rest. Okay, well, how about somewhere in this whole projection, you take responsibility for some of the teachings? Because there is no salvation. Even a great guru like Amma, my spiritual teacher, she can't do the work for me. I have to do the work. I can't, that's why we're here. It's your karma. It's your karma to have that mind. It's your karma to project. It's your karma to not put it into practice. You're the one not doing it. It's not the teacher's fault. You're the one creating the lens through which, if that teacher would just be what I thought they would be, then I would feel okay and then I would do the work. But how could I do any of the work when all the teachers are a mess too? All the teachers are corrupt and none of the teachers put into practice, blah, blah, blah. Okay, got it. But we all know that the teachings are pure themselves. The fact that there are other imperfect human beings trying to put them into practice as well, and then they have the audacity to teach them when they're not perfect themselves. Again, I get it. And teachers need to have a higher code of conduct and not be hypocrites. This is the thing that winds up being this is the knife edge. This is the razor's edge of the whole thing. When we see hypocrisy, when someone is saying all of this stuff and they're telling us that this is what we should do, and then they don't do it themselves. I get it. Listen, I'm the worst student in the world for this reason. I am. I admit it. I'm talking about it from my own point of view. That's why I have like one teacher, and it's only, the standard is like a divine enlightened being. That's it. That's about the only person I listen to. I don't listen to anybody else. No one. Which is also not so good. It can also go the other way, where we don't trust because we know everything everybody else says is just full of a bunch of stuff. So there's a happy medium that we're trying to get to. And the reason everything has been so intense this year around these issues is because, like I said, notice how these things have accelerated since May of this year with Mars in Pisces. And then Mars goes into Aries and goes back into Pisces. And Jupiter has been in Sagittarius. All this Jupiterian energy. And Jupiter was with Ketu, like bringing this focus and this anger and frustration around these themes. Okay, as we see in the chart now, again, Ketu is now in Scorpio. It's moved away. Mars, again, like we say, this is now November 20th. By that time, Mars starts to go forward. But the thing that you can take from all of this intensity and this scrutiny of our teachers and this frustration because our teachers aren't perfect, we're finding fault with everyone, even people we agree with, which is also the frustrating part. We have a hard time even getting along with people we agree with, because we're just finding so much fault with everything out of the principle of the thing, the principle of the thing. We're so fired up about our principles that we don't even make sense ourselves. We're blinded by our own hypocrisy. Because all of us are hypocrites as well. We could find hypocrisy. I guarantee I could find hypocrisy in 2 seconds with every person I know. Easily. It's not hard. So what we need to do is just breathe all of that out in real time as much as we can. But when we get all this energy concentrated like this, it's showing us this. This is what it's revealing. And I've been saying this all year pretty much. Especially with the nodal axis that was also going through Gemini and Sagittarius, that these kinds of things is what we're going to be doing. And of course, the most obvious manifestations of these things have been all of the conspiracy theories and all of the things like that. See, my friend Jill Leslie said, the spiritual community embrace of QAnon, calling Trump a savior, some even calling for violent civil war has been challenging. Exactly. These are the kinds of things we're seeing. This is where all this kind of stuff has come out. Spiritual community now just, in many ways, angry at themselves. What I've noticed, just to bring it into a sort of political, socio-political realm, so many of that spiritual community that is now QAnon, conspirituality driven, even a year ago, even in the Democratic primary season, they were all Bernie supporters. They were the most radical leftists there are. From Bernie bro to QAnon. I'm not saying all of it was that, but I'm saying it's almost like a kind of, I sit there and watch these friends of mine who I've watched for years who are now just jacked up and absolutely furious. I mean, the fury and the rage at the very thing they were 6 months ago is just staggering. I just can't believe that there's such blindness. And by the way, this is what Ketu, this is the blindness of Ketu, by the way. The blinding effect of Ketu is this rage at something that in many ways we are. It's like the shadow. When I explain Ketu to people, I'm always like, you know that thing that in your mind you would never be caught dead embodying that. And you're so jacked up and enraged about that thing going on. But yet if your closest friends, if you asked your closest friends, they would say, you know, I hate to tell you, but you're really kind of like that. That's sort of Ketu. And so one of the things I've seen is all of the kind of newly woke conspirituality. Oh, it's been Trump after all. And the ones that are the real problem are those lefties, the left, everyone from the left. So in other words, and then they take in that and they'll even project that everyone who, let's say, is liberal or a Democrat or something like that, that everyone who is even like a Democrat or a liberal is as fanatical as they used to be. Because this is the thing that I see. Because I've always been, I mean, I definitely lean more toward like the liberal end for sure, just because we've moved so far to the right now in this country that even someone like Bernie Sanders, who was like a mainstream Democrat 30 years ago, is called a communist. I mean, this is not an exaggeration. Bernie Sanders would have been a Democrat 30 years ago. Just a mainstream Democrat. Now he's a communist. But anyway, so people that were so extreme in that regard, again, 6-8 months ago, are now saying that everyone who even leans liberal is that kind of crazy leftist that, frankly, they used to be. Where 6 months ago, I was talking these people off the cliff because they were so jacked up and fired up that Elizabeth Warren had a little tiff with Bernie Sanders. And they were so fired up about that Elizabeth Warren was the spawn of hell. That was them 6 months ago. Where I was, back then I was saying, look, that's not really what's going on. So again, it's just so much projection and so much like fired up, crazy, polarizing shadow around these themes. With this Jupiter going through Sagittarius, it passed through Ketu, it passed over Ketu. Mars has been in Pisces, just fired up about all this. And just this miasma sort of confusion around what do we really believe, watching other people just kind of go into these states where you're like, good Lord. And again, I'm not trying to make fun of people here. I'm not. I'm just observing what I've noticed and how this is being shown from the perspective that I've seen. And so these are the kinds of crazy sort of polarizing wild shifts in perspective that I see so many people going through now. And these are like the signs of it that we've seen this year, especially since like May, when Mars went into Pisces and Jupiter went back into Sagittarius while K2 was still there. So again, Jupiter now moving into Capricorn, is going to bring a lot of that back down into a sort of methodology, and it's going to start to feel a lot like the feeling we had once COVID hit at the end of March. And so I'll talk more about that transit of Jupiter into Capricorn, of course. I'll do a whole thing on that. But this is a shift that's going to happen at the end of November, November 20th. We'll see Jupiter go into Capricorn and join closely with Saturn there. So this, so a few other things. Of course, Saturn is in Capricorn the entire time, and that's going to continue that reckoning with circumstances and with consequences. One second. So Saturn has been in Capricorn since early this year, and since end of January, and this has shown that need to be determined, to apply a lot of strength and determined effort to live our lives in integrity and walking the talk, and not just, again, Capricorn is a sign, it comes after Sagittarius, where we're not just believing in things, but we put them into practice. This is why Saturn, more than anything, is the real measure of how much growth we actually have in life, because we can believe a lot of things. And again, I'm just going to go back to the thing I was just mentioning. We have a lot of beliefs about all kinds of stuff. We believe that this is the thing and that's the thing, but then we have to put it into practice. What are you putting into practice? How much are you applying that? And what's going to be the result of those beliefs? So like right now in the US, we're voting, and we're doing all this voting while Jupiter, while all this is happening, Jupiter in Sagittarius, Mars in Pisces, but then we're going to have to, then those results come in Capricorn. So we have these beliefs, and then we put them into practice in Capricorn. And usually what happens with Capricorn energy is it shows how pure our beliefs are. That's why the better the beliefs, and the more pure the beliefs are, and the more congruent those beliefs are with your nature, the more you're going to put them into practice in Capricorn. That's why it's important that your beliefs are congruent with your true nature. Because you can believe a lot of things, but then when it comes to putting them into practice, which is the next sign, which is Capricorn, if it's not aligned with your nature, you're not going to do it. And you're going to be a hypocrite. So again, this is a huge part of hypocrisy, is we believe one thing and we practice something else. Like I said before, the hypocrisy is the thing that really disappoints us with teachers, and we should be. That's fine. But we don't have to get angry at them. We don't. What it should show us is how we're living out of alignment as well. And why do I need this person to be something that inspires me? Well, I need them to be something that inspires me because I don't have it myself. Because I'm not so inspired. I believed in them, and now I see they're not doing they're not modeling the behavior they're speaking, so they're a hypocrite. Instead of making that angry and then say, so they're all hypocrites. So what we wind up doing is saying things like, yeah, it's all those yoga teachers. They all say that stuff, but none of them do it. They're all hypocrites. And we wind up getting bitter, which is the Saturn theme, which is the Capricorn theme. This is the problem when Jupiter is in Capricorn. If we're not careful, is instead of the gift of being able to put our teachings into practice, we wind up being bitter and angry. This is the nature of Saturn when it's weak, is we accumulate all of these injustices. And we notice how, yeah, the world is just out there to screw you, and everybody's a hypocrite, and I don't believe in anything because, and we shrink. And all of it is fear. It's fear. And you know what it's a fear of? It's the fear of being disappointed. The thing I just said. Jupiter and Sagittarius is where we're hopeful. And then we get disappointed, and then we can just get bitter and afraid to expand and afraid to even try again. Don't let that happen. The people that fall short of their ideals and of their teachings, it's nothing but pitiful. It's just sad. It is sad. It's tragic that people can't put into practice what they believe. There's no reason to hate them for it. It's something we can learn from and aspire to do better ourselves and develop greater compassion and sensitivity to everyone who suffers. And that's the greatness of Saturn, summed up simply. We can let our disappointments harden us against all the hypocrites in the world. We can get hardened and resistant, which is really just our own fear of disappointment. Or we can have that greatness of Saturn reveal the tragedy and the sadness of someone who really is trying, but they're too weak to put into practice what they believe and what they say, and they're harming themselves and others in the process, and hope that they learn to do it better. And we can also maybe tell them and do other things. But it's more about the anger and the frustration that we need to be careful of. So this Saturn in Capricorn this is a long lesson. This is a couple years. So for the next couple years, we're under the gaze of this very intense Saturn in Capricorn. And I think over the next 5 years or so, we're going to have a big shift. Saturn is right now in Capricorn, bringing home the consequences of a lot of our mistakes of the past couple decades. And then when Saturn goes into Aquarius, I think it's going to be a real rejuvenating transit. I think in a few years, it'll be much easier. I said at the beginning of COVID, we were going to be dealing with that for a couple years, just simply based on the Saturn transit through Capricorn. And it was going to test us, test our patience, test a lot of other things. This year, it's going to be hard. And those who are acting like this next wave is just more of the hoax and whatnot, we're going to be hit with a tsunami if we're not careful. We know this even in pandemics, the 1918 Spanish flu and whatnot. The first wave was not the big wave. It was the second one, when the second winter came. The COVID is just as contagious and spread by asymptomatic spread. Again, so these things are real. It's going to have an economic effect and all of those things as well. So this is not a joke. This is real, and we're going to talk about how, and we're going to be seeing this playing out. And Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn this winter is going to be no joke. And this is going to be one of the ways where it's no joke. Because if I bring the outer planets in, Pluto, the outer planet Pluto is also right here. And it's going to be economic pressure. It could be much higher death tolls than we had and much more serious than last year. And we've had time to plan for this in the world. And we see all around the world we're just getting impatient with it in Europe, of course, in the U.S. and whatnot. So this is coming, and Saturn in Capricorn is bringing us the seriousness and the forbearance to live a more sustainable life. And like I said at the very beginning, when this pandemic hit, when this virus was unleashed, the biggest thing that caused it, to me, without a doubt, is our mistreatment of animals, our mistreatment of the environment, our idea that we own all of this and it's up to us to just extract all the value we can from the land, from the animals, from the creatures. It's all about money, money, money. And the unsustainable monetary practices, just as in our relationship to nature and animals especially. And all of that is Saturn in Capricorn. Again, not to mention the corrupt oligarchical structure of finances around the world and all that. This stuff is going to come to crash here. It's come to destroy the old paradigm. But part of that, and I said this from the beginning, and I've always maintained that whether people know it or not, we are transitioning out of a meat-eating paradigm. It's not happening rapidly, but it's happening more rapidly now than it was last year. If I would have said all of this, how many people now are aware of factory farming and the unsustainable practices of wet markets and just all of this stuff, not just in China, but over here too, factory farming practices and our unsustainable relationship with nature and animals, especially the sentient beings that we use as not just food sources, but as like incubators for milk and everything else. There is no comparison. It is easily the worst thing human beings have ever done. There's not even a close second. We recoil in disgust at the Holocaust. Well, we perpetrate 1 million Holocausts a day on other sentient beings without any question. Most of the people don't even question it. In fact, if you talk about ending these practices, you're some kind of like kooky vegan or some whatever. Factory farming, agribusiness, agriculture is the worst blight on humanity ever. And it's the most destructive to the environment. It's the most unhealthy physically. Again, all of these things have come home to a point of revelation with COVID. Because it's not just that it came from animals and humans interacting with other species and viruses coming from bats or pangolins or whatnot and then jumping into humans like a zoonotic virus. It's not just that part of it, but it's also the part that most of the people who, the high death rates from COVID are people who have been eating this crap for decades and their body is so destroyed, they don't have an immune system to fight things off very well. All of the meat-eating culture that we live in, this is one of the reasons it's ravaged the Western world more than the East, is rates of obesity, heart disease, all of the fat and overweight people that come from eating all of this crappy meat that is nothing but a product of torture and hatred. One of the reasons it didn't ravage Asia as bad, first of all, they have better tracing and all of that, but also they're healthier. And part of the reason they're healthier is they don't eat as much meat. Now, they are a meat-eating culture as well, but not as much. So their obesity rates are much lower. Heart disease, much lower in Asia. It's one of the reasons why it's ravaged Europe and America. Well, part of with America is our leadership as well. But I'm saying this because the health benefits and the consequences, which is Saturn in Capricorn, the consequences of this unsustainable relationship with nature, Saturn is just pummeling the world with it. And as soon as Saturn went into Capricorn at the end of January, within a month, especially after Mars and Jupiter joined, Saturn said, okay, world, we're putting you on a timeout. Timeout. Saturn and Capricorn said, okay, world, go in your home and stop screwing up nature. And what happened? The world marveled at the beauty of nature with human beings locked in their home for a few weeks. The world marveled, and the world came together at how beautiful it was that you could see the that you could see the Himalayas in India, that nature very quickly cleared up. Now, we've gotten back to work in many places, but many places it's still, humans have been, their busyness and their unsustainable relationship with nature has been curtailed. We're not flying all over the place. We're not getting on boats, sailing on the seas, polluting. Many businesses that were luxury businesses have been pressured. These are changes that are happening we're never going back to the way it was. But we're figuring out what's next. And that started at the end of January. I said it then. This is going to be for the next few years. And this is what it is. Again, we get so hyper and so passionate about, now we're way off the deep end about masks or not masks, or is it a hoax, or is it this, or that's not the bigger picture. The bigger picture is we are reworking our relationship with nature and money, the unsustainable paradigm that's just based on profit and a rapacious patterns of consumption that destroys the land, that enslaves and tortures innocent animals as a matter of design, and we can't sustain it. That's it. And what happened? Mother Nature, the universe said, stop. You're stopping. So all of these things are what we're working through. And again, Saturn in Capricorn is going to keep chugging along. And again, in November, it's going to get amplified because Jupiter is going there again. And we could see, again, some major economic news, some major stress and pressure. We're definitely going to be seeing a revisiting of the seriousness of COVID again. By the way, I said this a few months ago, that Jupiter going back into Capricorn joined Saturn again. It's going to be a rude awakening for those who are denying and it's a hoax and all this stuff. We'll see how much of a hoax it's going to be in a month. When, again, we're going to be back in a place that we're unprepared for in much of the world, certainly in the U.S. Unfortunately. And again, hopefully we can get some good therapeutics or whatever. But again, Saturn is going to keep going along through Capricorn. So a few other things to finish up the month here. Again, we start with the Sun in Libra, and with Venus debilitated, and in an exchange with Mercury. So again, these are, this is a typical expression of Venus when it's debilitated. It often is exchanging with its ruler, like we have now. I just did a couple videos on that, so you can watch that for more details. But we have this dialogue between, in relationships, maybe not feeling like doing it so much because Venus in Virgo. But Mercury in Libra, Mercury's retrograde, is also bringing more of an introspection and more of a, more of a willingness to engage with people, even though Venus in Virgo doesn't really feel like it so much. But especially Mercury turns direct or stops retrograding on the 2nd is what it was. So on the day of the 3rd, Mercury starts going forward again. And so we have, instead of this sort of reflection on our relationships as well, again, they could be kind of stuck a little bit right now with Venus in Virgo. Mercury's in Libra, but it's retrograde. So again, it's still like sort of putting off engagement and working through things with our partners. But after the 3rd, at the beginning of November, we may see a real kind of loosening of that as Mercury turns direct, and that exchange with Venus can bring more ease around maybe some things that you haven't been talking about. It could be, it could be favorable in that regard, particularly by the 16th, by the middle of November. By the middle of November, Venus is also in Libra. So we could see a lot of our connections with our partners really improve. Relationships have been sort of stressed and sort of tricky since September, when Venus went into Leo and then Virgo. So we could see a real improvement in our capacity and desire to engage with our partners in the middle of November, as Venus and Mercury are both in Libra moving forward. So hang in there if you're in a relationship. Try not to be so hard and critical of your partners until then. Middle of November, you can see Venus, Mercury, and Libra. That's a really good placement. The rest of the month, pretty much after November 16th, will be an improvement in your relationships. Now, the Sun is debilitated in the sign of Libra until the 15th. And the Sun in Libra, it's where maybe we don't trust our own instincts as much. It's an important transit, because when the Sun is in Libra, we're kind of checking in with other people to see if it's okay that we shine. Is it okay if I'm powerful and confident and strong? It's not going to offend you, is it? And that doesn't usually make the Sun part of us feel very good. Usually the Sun is like, I'm doing what I'm doing, and I trust my own integrity and authenticity. So you're in that realm a little bit now, even with the Sun in Libra. So you might be questioning and not so sure about your path right now, until the middle of November. But again, this is good for service. This is good for being humble. It's good for, for forming alliances with others. And particularly if you already have a lot of confidence. Like if you have a powerful Sun in your natal chart, when the Sun goes into signs like Libra and Capricorn, Aquarius, where they're more humbled, it can be very good. If you tend to overdo your Sun, that sense of mirroring and being more humbled can be very beneficial. I can speak for myself, as my Sun is quite prominent, and when the Sun goes through Libra, I can feel it brings out a certain sensitivity that can be quite helpful. So keep that in mind. And again, this is a transit in the sky. So, but by the 16th, the Sun then goes into Scorpio, which is more about, deeper, psychological and spiritual explorations and emotional, working through emotional stress and difficulty. Scorpio is where we have like emotional, psychological triggers that are scary to us, and we're trying to work through our imagined fears. Can be some, like paranoia and things like that. So with the Sun going through Scorpio, we have an opportunity to really illuminate those qualities and really illuminate the darkness. And so this that quality from November 16th until the end of November, it's a good time to really work through some of your deeper, our deeper psychological stresses and struggles. One of the great things about the Sun in Scorpio is that it's very devotional, and that we need to be devotional in the Scorpio area of life. And in fact, Ketu in Scorpio now is bringing greater devotion and greater transcendence and surrender and greater willingness and capacity to explore those parts where we're vulnerable and acknowledge a deeper devotion to especially the protective forms of God, like Goddess Durga and Goddess Kali and Shiva, and those protective aspects of God and consciousness are really powerful now with Ketu there, but in particular with the Sun going through Scorpio from the 16th until the middle of December. And there's going to be an eclipse there later. I'll talk about that later. But the Sun getting close to the eclipse point also brings that scrutiny and that intensity. As you see, as we get through November, the Sun gets closer to the South Node. So again, from the middle of November until the end, a lot of that deeper exploration and that deeper consciousness and devotion can emerge. So again, Mercury then also goes into Scorpio around the end of November, but it's mostly in Libra, and that brings our mind into that deep and sort of penetrating realm as well. There's a I do look a little bit at the conversations, and Tyler Russell has a very interesting thing that he's saying. He says, humans evolved with animals. They would not give us the same rights as you want to give them. He says, but they have souls, I believe. They would just as soon harvest us for food as well if they had intelligence. So that's interesting. And, you know, these kind of ideas are put forth often. And, you know, it's hard to say. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think I really agree. Animals see certain other animals as food. Aside from that, though, we're not animals. And every spiritual tradition, everyone, says that we don't need to be cruel to animals just because we can. You know, a father can beat the shit out of his kid, too, if he wants, and say, well, the kid would do it to me. Or we could do, I mean, we can rationalize anything. This is my feeling. The reason in every spiritual tradition, you know, vegetarianism and non-cruelty, or what's called ahimsa in yoga, is stressed, is because if we don't need to be cruel to another living being, why would we? And the excuse or the idea that just because, well, they would do it to us. Okay, so are we animals? We don't have the karma of animals. We're not animals. We have an animalistic nature and a humanity that's built on top of it. And that humanity also feels a level of suffering that an animal doesn't. A tiger would maybe do that to us, and a tiger wouldn't have any conscience about ripping our head off if, for whatever reason, maybe, maybe not. I mean, animals also have compassion, so they might feel bad too. We don't really know, but they don't have a conscience. They don't have a guilty conscience. They don't have, again, you watch it, like, you know, I had cats and whatnot. You watch cats, first of all, animals they're very cruel. My cats used to hunt absolutely for fun, for sport. They loved it. They loved killing birds, ripping their heads off with no compassion. That's absolutely true. They didn't need it for the food. No, animals are cruel. Nature is cruel. And we're cruel. And it's the animalistic part of us that is cruel and brings suffering upon ourselves. And with this much power as a species, there's that much responsibility as well. The more responsibility you have, the more powerful you have, the more power you have, the more responsibility comes along with it. Because we're now so powerful, if our cruelty is not checked, we could destroy the entire world, all humanity and all animals. So your point is not, it's not a good point to make for human beings who are aspiring to be enlightened and who are aspiring toward the higher angels of their nature. And if you're aspiring to be an animal, then go kill animals. But let me say that if you want to do it, go kill the animal. Go kill an animal on equal terms. Literally, go track an animal in the wild. Again, we've not even made it a fair fight. We don't hunt animals. We're not tigers. We're not in a jungle chasing animals, pouncing on them, and eating them. That's not what we're doing. Instead, we have sanitized and sterilized the entire brutal Holocaust into this sterilized Holocaust. They're penned up, they're bred. It's this antiseptic process that nobody has to look at. All we have to do is go to the store and pull something out of cellophane, and we have this illusion that we're this apex predator that somehow deserves this. If you want to use that excuse, Tyler, and you're free to do it, go kill the animal. Go kill it, go hunt it. And by the way, you could say, okay, well, Ted Nugent does it. You know, Donald Trump's kids do it. Yeah, they do it with a gun. They do it with a bow and arrow. If you want to be a predator, go be a predator. Go chase the animal down, catch it, rip its, kill it with your bare hands or your teeth or something like a tiger does. And eat that thing raw. Again, this is what an apex predator does. Human beings, we're not apex predators. This doesn't even have anything to do with food. There's one thing that drives this whole thing, and you know what it is, and it's money. There's nothing to do with food. There's nothing to do with nutrition. It has nothing to do with any of it. It has to do with money, like everything else. This is why when I say this issue, it's not just about animals. Animals is the most obvious and cruel and visceral abomination and sin, because we're not only destroying the land, we're killing living, sensitive beings as if they don't have any soul or any feelings. That's the most insidious part. But it's just it's part of a greater equation, which is our relationship with nature in general. Animals being part of nature. If we just left them alone, nature would be fine. Ecosystems would take care of themselves and it would be fine. It was fine without us. It's our interference, and our commodification. We turn them into a commodity for one reason and one reason only, and it's money. It has nothing to do with food or anything else. So if we want to be human beings, let's be human beings and be humane. And by the way we treat animals is the way we treat each other. It's no different. It's no different. Except for we don't treat each other that way for money. We treat each other that way for power, which is another form of money. But we'll perpetrate a Holocaust and a genocide against another tribe also. And what's one of the first things that we do when we want to perpetrate an abomination against another group of people? What do? We start calling them animals. We start dehumanizing them. And we live in a culture that has dehumanized. When we're dehumanizing animals like that, and we grow up in a world where we're used to seeing sentient, beautiful creatures dehumanized, it's just normal that we love the dog, but we eat the pig. When we're used to seeing that, then we're not very far from doing that to each other. It doesn't take much to switch turning people into animals. Once we've turned people into subhuman animals, then we're this far away from saying, well, let's put them in pens and kill them too. And by the way, this is one of the scariest qualities of this whole recent expression of QAnon, and the Democrats are all pedophile, child molester devils. This way of turning human beings into something that is inhuman and inhumane is a first step in slaughtering them and some kind of revolution against them. So this is it's a big question, and Tyler, I'm fine that you brought it up, and so I'll just leave it at that, because it's very important, though, I think, that these these kind of questions get addressed, and that's my view on it, is that we're not animals. We're not just animals. And they talked over and over again about our relationship with animals. And they have entire deities, and animals are deified. Even what we would now call animal sacrifice, which is not cool, they continued animal sacrifices. In fact, some of it still happens in many cultures in a very different way. And again, it's not as if it should be done. But there were rituals that the Brahmins would perform that the animal who was being sacrificed would become enlightened. The animal would become liberated. When you killed an animal, this is part of Native American culture as well. The animal would be prayed over, and a ceremony was done with so much reverence for that animal who gave his life for your life, that it was a divine, what's the word? Sort of benediction, that the animal itself would become a divine being for giving his life for your life. So even ancient dharmic cultures in India, all dharmic cultures, in Native American traditions we know, even their relationship with animals that they ate, because yes, they ate animals. If we have to survive, we should eat an animal. But what happens when you eat an animal? The animal is another being. It's God's being. It's not even any less than human beings. It's just a different incarnation. Once you understand karma, then you understand that that's the karma of that being at this moment. And it's not even a lower expression of karma. It's not like a human being is a higher karma. It's a different karma. Because we might incarnate in the next lifetime as a cow, just so we can experience what it is that a cow experiences. Just so that, because there are certain lessons that can only be experienced as a cow. Whatever that is, I don't know, because maybe in past lives I was a cow. But it's not necessarily even a lowering. It is now, but by the way, there are cows who incarnate in Amma's ashram, and they live their whole life in Amma's ashram. And they're cows. They're not lower beings. In fact, and I'll say this, there's been stories, and I would certainly think this is true, that cows that incarnate to live on an ashram of the Divine Mother, where they do nothing but hear prayers all day, they're taken care of, they're worshipped. These are some divine beings. Many of them might be these great sages who just wanted to come down and live a while in the ashram of a divine being, in the beauty and sanctity and providence of a Mahatma, of a great sage. So they incarnate as a cow. Look at a cow's life. The cow just sits there and it's taken care of, it's washed, it's fed, it gives its milk very clearly, or very freely. It's a blissful animal. So we can't assume, I'm speaking about this because of karma. And by the way, those people who are like, can you get back to astrology or whatever, you can leave. I'm talking now about this because I think it's interesting. And I'm not going to be talking about November anymore. I already did the forecast. So now I'm talking about this because it's very interesting and important. And our relationship with animals and karma is it's important to understand. You might come back and incarnate as a plant. And you might think, well, that's some kind of punishment. It's not a punishment. There are certain karmas you can only learn, let's say, as a plant or as a tree. As a tree that lives 300 years just rooted in the earth. Maybe you lived your life and you mastered every lesson there was, but you were just too ungrounded, too unrooted. You weren't so connected to nature. So what happens? You incarnate maybe as a majestic tree, lives totally immersed in nature, totally rooted. And you experience the divine bliss of being a tree for however long it is. Or maybe you don't need it to be that long. Maybe it's a shorter life. We have to get out of this idea that we understand even the mind of God and the laws of karma, that everything, that the culmination of everything we could ever experience is as a human being, which is not true. Animals have a whole different relationship with life, and they need to be treated as divine beings. They're not our property. And it's our karma how we treat animals. It's our karma, meaning your karma is your actions. And how you treat animals is your karma. And again, it's not to punish anybody or to say that you're going to get punished for eating meat or whatever, but again, everyone has their own karma. That's the karma of the cow to be born at this time. It's the karma of how you treat them. So it's a very subtle and nuanced thing, and we shouldn't think about karma and species and different incarnations as some hierarchy. I'm glad Tyler asked the question. And I'm happy to talk about it because I'm very interested in these subjects, and I'm talking about it a bit because I don't think these things are talked about very much. And particularly as Westerners and even Easterners, that human beings are somehow the kings of the planet. Like, this is our place to do with what we want. We're stronger than them. Why shouldn't we eat them? They would eat us. Okay, I hear you. The earth doesn't belong to us. We're not better. We have a different karma. I would say there are probably many animals that are smarter than many human beings. I would just venture to say that. You don't know what the soul is behind those eyes. That could be a divine being. It is a divine being. I mean, it could literally be a saint behind those eyes. And I think everyone who's ever had a relationship with an animal, that really knew an animal very well, would attest to the kind, loving, gentle heart in that animal. And that goes for all animals. Pigs, cows, chickens, fish, anything. They're all divine beings. And in India, there is definitely separate karmas with different animals. Killing serpents, torturing or killing any animals, even eating plants without saying prayers. So to think that these things aren't inculcated in all of the texts, at least this concept of ahimsa, would be wrong. So I'm not going to get into a back and forth about it. These things have to do with our level of spiritual practice, spiritual awareness, connection to these practices. And so we'll just leave it at that. And I hope you all enjoy this, that it was helpful to see the November 2018 forecast and my little riff here on food and animals and whatnot, karma. So you all take care and have a good